Good morning, everyone. Good morning. Hope you're doing well, and thanks for attending the last session before lunch. My name is Nathan Langton. I'm a product manager. Getting a little feedback. We'll see how it goes. I'm a product manager at Ping Identity. I've been with Ping for almost 13 years now. Started on the engineering side, and last 6-7 years of my journey with Ping have been on the product side. For the last, I'd say 3 to 4 years, I've had the privilege of working with PM and engineering team around our solutions to orchestration. So I'm very passionate about orchestration. I love the space. I'm passionate about what others are doing, not just Ping in this space, because it breeds further innovation with orchestration. I am from East Coast Canada, so I work remote, the province of New Brunswick. But I am originally from South Africa, which may be why you're detecting a little bit of a conflict between Canadian and South African. I guess I need to be closer. There we go. So today I want to leave you with a few topics. One is why experience matters. What are the challenges around building multi-branded experiences? How does orchestration come to and help you solve some of these challenges? The benefits of orchestration, and a few insights that I've seen with customers that are using our particular orchestration platform and how they're dealing with this multi-branded challenges that they face. Hopefully I'll leave you also with a few strategies to consider if you're interested in using orchestration as part of your solution. But to start things off, I want to start with a very simple demo, just to kind of illustrate what I want to cover. So let's see if I can kickstart this. So in this example, or this demo, I have 2 users that are logging in. These 2 users are both part of different corporations that roll up into a parent organization. Both these individuals expect a personalized, branded experience when they log in. In this example, you'll see a generic identifier first form that prompts for a user. And once that user enters in their username or email, behind the scenes, orchestration does some lookups, determines the relationship of that user, and determines what branding they will show for subsequent prompts as part of the journey. So in this case, Ellen is logging in. The lookup happens and determines that Ellen should be presented with the BX Insurance, which is a fictitious brand under this company, with their branding, and then Ellen can continue, enter in the credentials, and log into the portal. Pretty simple, right? The next example that I have is a user named Freddie, if this proceeded right. Same situation, presented with a very generic identifier first form. Orchestration handles the lookup, the determination of what branding to show. In this case, they're logged in via the BX Airlines, which is subsidiary in this fictitious corporation. So fairly simple example, but really when it comes down to it, building these types of experiences, probably more complex than what I just showed you, takes a lot of consideration. You're thinking about how does your branding, your look and feel impact your end user experience. You look at the design of the forms and how does that remove friction from either the authentication or registration onboarding process. You look at personalization. Where can you kind of make this end user kind of welcomed within this experience, either by using their name in the flow or whatever that may be. You're looking at meeting that user where they're at in their language of choice with localization. And then you're looking at how do I design this experience with security in mind, right? And based on the type of user, maybe they go through a few more hoops or checks than another type of user. So there's a lot to it in just a simple demo that you have to consider. And experience is key to winning in today's digital age, right? So when you think of it, everything is digital. The apps that you interact with at work, the ordering mobile app that you order your Starbucks coffee, or Tim Hortons in my case, from Canada, and tracking your fitness on your watch. Everything's digital, right? And a Forrester study a few years ago said that for every $1 invested in user experience, a company can get back $100 in sales or revenue, right? So it's important. It's important to design these things, whether it's the SIAM or the workforce for productivity. It's important to design these things intentionally. Now, if you don't believe me, let's look at some of these stats. So this was a recent PINC study across 14 different regions, where it's 81% of consumers say that ease of use is important when interacting with a brand. The same study showed that 43% of consumers would leave an online service and switch to a competitor if the login process was significantly easier, right? Another study said 50% of consumers reduced spending with a brand after a poor experience. I bet you guys have done the same. Had a poor experience and decided on an alternative website or a competitor. That same study, or a similar study by PricewaterhouseCoopers, said that 30% of consumers leave after one negative experience, just one. And finally, another study said 55% of consumers leave a brand because of poor experience. So it's not just the fact that we have to create journeys that delight users, that allow us to attract more customers or increase our brand loyalty. But we've also got to ensure that security is in mind. Customers expect both. I think ages ago there was this slide that you guys are probably familiar with security on one side and usability or experience on the other side, right? And it's like, what's the choice? Customers don't expect you to make a choice today. They expect both. So lots of challenges there that we come up against when talking about multi-branded or just experiences in general. Now I want to switch focus and talk about multi-branded experiences, which add additional challenges into your organization. This is a representation of a brand hierarchy. You could probably Google and find similar views of this. But an example here would be under branded house, the branded house, which is where products are organized around a monolithic parent brand. So an example of that would be Apple with Apple News, Apple Music, Apple TV. Sub-brands are where individual brands are distinct, but related to a parent brand. So an example of that would be like Virgin, Virgin Active, Virgin Radio, Virgin Media, that falls under the Virgin brand. Endorsed brands, this is common in the hotel industry, right? Like MGM or Marriott, where you have like brands like Courtyard by Marriott or Spring Hill Suites by Marriott, right? And I believe there's a number of those situations on the strip here with MGM. And then you have the house of brands, which is individual brands that stand alone, right? Nestle has 2,000 of these brands. Unilever, I don't know what their numbers is, but it's thousands, where they have brands under it like Dove, Axe, Lipton Tea, right, that stand on their own, and you don't necessarily know that they're kind of bubbled up to the parent Unilever organization, especially when you interact with that branded experience from their website. On top of this, you have the ways, and you guys are very familiar with these acronyms, the ways that we transact between different types of businesses, right? You've got B2C, B2E, and even within these, like B2E, you've got types of employees, right? Contractors, full-time, that may have tailored experiences. Dealerships in the B2B model, and maybe if a dealership is selling a car, there'd be a B2B2C model, right? You got suppliers, agents, affiliates, partners. So I think I've pretty much covered almost everyone in this room with some aspect of these last two slides as to why branded experiences are important and can be tricky. So some of the challenges around this is organizations often need to manage identities under different brands, sub-organizations, or departments. Also based on types of users under those brands. Oftentimes, a requirement is that each brand requires a tailored experience, right? Companies end up creating complex, hard-to-manage relationships to represent their businesses, which is an extreme challenge. And if you're building out a journey, you're making a lot of synchronizing of data, making a lot of API calls to different data sources, trying to reconcile, trying to look up what you need to make a decision within a journey. And then you want people to experience your company, not as a fragmented set of brands, right? And I see this last statement, I see this quite a bit recently with customers that are utilizing our orchestration solution, where they're looking for a unified experience for authentication or registration across their whole portfolio of brands. They don't want this to be a very different experience going to this place versus another place within their organization, right? They don't want it to be like a fragment set of brands under them. They want something that's unified and consistent. So, how does orchestration help? And you probably kind of see where I'm going here with all the complexities, all the silos of data, all the decisions that need to be made. And before the orchestration before orchestration really hit the identity market, this was all up to developers to code in logic, make API calls, and to build this out in kind of very hard-coded legacy ways. Orchestration takes you from an IT reality that's very cumbersome, very complex. All our use cases are much more complex than the demo that I showed you earlier, where things like integrations take months. And everyone's got integration, whether they're fraud, risk, whether it's identity verification. Then when it comes to testing your experiences to optimize on your journeys, A/B testing is typically the route customers take. But it requires too many developers and too many resources to build these different experiences and to test them and collect metrics on them. Then the IT reality is that there's not much customization, and if you need customization, you need a developer to be associated with your project. Or if you want to add a new functionality to your use case or to your journey, again, a developer or someone that has significant expertise in integrating this with an application. So you're not agile. You're very limited to a hard-coded process. And that's where orchestration kind of helps. It helps you build those journeys. It helps solve the integration complexity issue by abstracting out all your integrations. It helps overcome your technology and resource limitations, but allowing you to take it up one level from what a developer typically gets involved to getting your business and your admins involved in designing these journeys as configuration instead of code. And it allows you to gain visibility into the user experience. You can visually see the flow as you're developing within an orchestration platform. You can test every aspect of the flow, and you can track your users through that flow. So 3 benefits to identity orchestration. First is it allows you to move faster. It allows you to achieve time to value in a quicker way. I had a customer a couple weeks ago present about their identity verification portal that they were building, that they were scheduled, based on previous experience, it was scheduled to take 5 months. And they were able to roll it out within a couple weeks, right? All because of the power that orchestration provided them. Allows you to save money when it comes to integration costs. It really allows you as a business to not feel you're locked in to a specific vendor, because ripping out a vendor within an orchestration platform is just replacing that node on a canvas or that box on the canvas with another vendor and making sure the mappings wire up. You don't have to change the contract with your application every time you rip out a vendor, right? It allows you to be innovative. It allows you to have that agility to make changes and not have to go to a developer and say, hey, by the way, my changes have impacted the application contract. The application just has one contract with the orchestration platform, and the orchestration platform dictates the journey that can change in many ways, right, over time. So in my example, I'm going to show you a few demos of trying to achieve and solve some of these multi-branded problems with an orchestration tool called DaVinci. So that's Ping's branded product. But there are other orchestration products in this industry, and these are some of the things that you want to look for the benefits around orchestration. Obviously, one of the key benefits of orchestration is no-code drag and drop, building out your journey on a canvas. The rapid ability to test every step of the way, add a node to the canvas, test it out. Add another node to the canvas, test out the journey, right? Iterative development, foster the market. It allows you to select templates to use instead of starting from scratch. And orchestration engines typically have a library of out-of-the-box integrations, right? In our case, we're approaching 2,000, soon to be 3,000 nodes that you can drag onto the canvas, right? Each node that you drag onto the canvas represents an action, right? And then the ability to optimize your experiences, whether it's using the in-product analytics or in-product policies around A/B testing. And I've got a slide on that in a little bit. We have a saying at Ping, if you can whiteboard it, you can build it. And this is one of the powers that on why orchestration has really changed the identity industry, in my opinion, where it's kind of democratized the way we build these experiences. It's allowed an IAM admin to get involved in building the journey rather than just dictating the journey to someone else to build. So it's as simple as choosing a use case, looking up what your templates are, picking a template like a magic link authentication template, and putting it into your orchestration tool. Or in some cases, having that library embedded in your tool and picking the template right from your product. Starting with a template and then customizing it. Once you've customized it to how you want your journey to happen, you can leverage version control to help you with A/B testing. So you can create policies where you can say, hey, for this version, I want 80% of my traffic to go to that version of this flow or journey, and 20% traffic to go to maybe the next version that I'm testing out, to test if it's an optimal experience, right? Or maybe you're rolling out an update, you want to slowly roll that out based on percentages of traffic, right? As part of it. 60% of organizations find A/B testing highly valuable for optimizing conversion rates. And being able to track a user's success in both versions of a flow based on your policy is important for dictating any optimizations that you want with it. So hopefully I've sold you on the benefits of orchestration, right? I'm very passionate about it. I think it's really changed the way we've brought in the ability to configure and customize our experiences. So I want to switch now to a couple examples of what I'm seeing out there. Now, these are just the tip of the iceberg, and I already see a couple individuals in the audience that I know are doing some pretty cool things that aren't even captured on the slide with the orchestration platforms. In this case, this customer wanted a unified login experience across 2,000 brands. Now, this was a case where they were in the music industry, so their brands were either subsidiaries or artists themselves, right? And the way that they chose to solve this issue of how do I have one journey in an orchestration platform to rule them all, rather than 2,000 journeys to manage, was to, when they integrate orchestration, they read the application context, or they inject application context into the start of a journey, right? So things like application name and client ID, application ID. So think of it, I'm logging into a specific artist's website, and I hit that login or registration button, and all of a sudden context to where I am is injected into the journey. Based on that identifier, they know which application has initiated this flow. They do a lookup to their CDN and GitHub. They grab some of the branding assets, and they use that branding assets in a form that's one of the nodes on the DaVinci canvas, or the orchestration's canvas, to present a login or registration experience that's branded for that specific artist. And then the rest of the flow proceeds. So a pretty unique way to build out a unified login experience that would have been very hard to do without orchestration coming into the mix, right? So just an example of the power of orchestration. Sorry about the spikes in the sound. Just looking at the time. In this case, this is a customer that is a sporting customer that runs global events. They have a number of partnerships, 15, 16 partnerships. And at any one time, they have campaigns that they've established with these partners, right? Like a joint partnership to sell a beverage, or a joint partnership to sell some sort of game or fantasy cards for the sports organization. And one of the neat things that they were able to do is they were able to build a unified authentication experience, but then for every one of these campaigns, they organize them in what we call a subflow, right? So if there's a campaign this month, they bring in a new subflow, campaign number 1, and that provides a unique branded experience, maybe with things like additional questions for their progressive profiling experience that is specific to that brand, and they collect context as to where you are, what brands you're interested in based on where you are in the portal. Maybe you're interacting with that brand, that partner in the portal. They collect context, and then they branch you to the unique experience in the subflow. The neat thing about using subflows here is that the next month they may have a different brand, and a different marketing campaign with a partner. They rip out the subflow that is expired, and they just flip it with a new subflow for that particular period of time, and they don't have to change the core of their parent journey, right? So a very modular approach to helping with multi-branded and partners. This is the one that I showed you in the early part of the presentation. In this case, you have an organization that has multiple sub-brands. You present a generic first factor login. You look up that identity. You make some determination about that identity based on its relationships. What groups, populations, organizations they belong in, depending on what data structures you're storing these identities in, right? With orchestration, the power of it is you could use a ping data source, or you can use a non-ping data source, right? From a competitor within the DaVinci flow. It doesn't matter where your identities live, you can reach out and make decisions with that data store. And then make a decision as to which experience that end user will go through based on the sub-brands, right? So 3 examples that we're seeing out there. I'm sure there's many more. But I want to kind of touch on that last one in a quick demo. Before I do that, the power of orchestration when it comes to multi-branded experience really comes down to the ability to make runtime decisions based on identity data. So this slide is kind of the summary slide of the power behind it, right? It's the ability to interrogate or inject data into the flow and make a runtime decision on that. And that could be decisions made based on application context, the identity relationship, the identity providers that are involved, user and device context, the relationships between the user and maybe the location. We have a customer that's based on a location, bringing you through a journey that not only has a different brand experience, but has different third-party connectors for identity verification based on their location, where they believe that these vendors do a better job than these other vendors in these regions. So a lot of flexibility in making runtime decisions on identity data. This is really the power orchestration kind of brings to the table. So some strategies. These strategies kind of touch these three different slides of customer examples. One is inject context into the flow up front, into the journey up front, and that dictates the remainder of the experience, right? The second one, look up context within the flow. Now, in this case, if you're looking up context within the flow to make a runtime decision, you kind of have to get that information from the end user. So in this case, you may be forced to use a generic identifier first type form or something to pull that identity to make a call to look up whatever you're basing your decision on. And then the ability to manage experiences, whether it's through branching decisions based on that identity lookup, or through maybe subflows where you manage like unique experiences separate from your parent flow, right? So a few more slides, but before I move into the last demo, it's important to know what UI architecture options your orchestration engine provides you, right? Some may provide what I'm showing on the screen. This is very, ping-centric, but some of these things are very common with other options out there. You have this concept of hosted pages, where you can either through configuration or bring your own CSS or HTML, Ping will render the page for you and host the content, right? Then you have this concept of embedded approach, like a widget that you can embed in your application, and it will render the flow, but it inherits the properties of your application's branding, like CSS, for example. And then you have your traditional SDKs and APIs if you want to decouple the UI from the user experience of the flow and handle that separately, right? So a number of options. In the first demo I'm about to show you, I'm focused on the hosted pages, which is your fastest time to value. But if that isn't configurable enough for you, you may want to look at other options, like the widget approach, which I have a slide for. So for the configurable hosted pages, I'm going to orientate you to the next few videos. So we have a no-code orchestration engine where I throw nodes onto this canvas to present forms and look up data, right? Now, whenever I present a form, that form is configured in what we call themes and branding, where I configure a theme and brand. So I've configured that BX, which stands for Be Extraordinary, BX Insurance, BX Hotels, BX Travel. That's configured in the themes and branding, and that's with my logos, my background colors, my background images. And then I got a WYSIWYG form builder that helps design the layout of the forms, whether it's the login form or the registration form. And the themes and branding applies on top of the forms, right? So I can have one form and use it for 3 or 4 themes, right? And then you have language support that allows you to manage and create custom text for various end-user facing screens. So with that, my first video is going to show you configuring the theme and branding. My second video is going to show you the form building. And my third one is going to show you tying them together in an orchestration tool. So I chickened out on doing this live, so I recorded this a few days ago. So here's my themes and branding. I've gone and added a new one, and I've picked the mural theme in our case because I like that look and feel. And I want to add this theme and branding for BX Insurance, which is a new organization under our parent company to provide insurance for travel. So I've added a new logo that I was given for that particular brand. I've uploaded a background image, and now I'm going to go and pick the color schema that I want for that brand. So instead of just picking it with a color picker, I know the exact format. So I go and add it there and change the button colors, change the links, and I'm happy with this look and feel. So I save this, and now I'm going to use this in my experience. You can see I've got a number of brands, and under the brands, for example, BX Hotels, you see there's a theme ID. That's an identifier for that theme, right? So that's important to know for my third orchestration demo, where I key on that theme ID. Okay, so next, I've got my BX Insurance theme. I'm going to go to Forms, and I'm going to create, using our WYSIWYG form builder, a couple forms to use. So first of all, I'm going to show you a few templates. I'm going to pick the registration template, and this is really to illustrate that I can create some basic forms without the need of a developer. I can add mobile phone, given name, family name. I can flip them around. I can change the size. I can add some validation. I can change the labels if I want, from mobile to cell phone. I can scrap that idea because I didn't like it. Oh, make it required or optional. Scrap that idea and say, no, I want to localize it. So labels, the values from those labels are driven from the browser preferences. So I find my key value pair for my localization. So you see it's there, it's a chip. So that is now going to leverage localization for that particular label. I just did it for one, just to illustrate the power of it. I can go to my language section now and say, hey, I want more than English. I want to enable French or French Canadian. I don't know if that's an option. And I'm going to go and manage my string value pairs now. So I'm going to go to my standard fields, find that mobile number. You can see the English comparison there and the French, and I can modify that to, I don't know why I would want to modify that, but this is just an illustration. And probably if you're interacting with this language bundle, you're uploading and downloading the entire set at once. You're not doing individual string manipulation, even though I'm showing that to you. For my demo, I'm going to actually ignore that registration, and I'm going to use the login and user lookup forms for my demo in the next slide. Okay, so now I'm in DaVinci. I think it's playing. Let me just check. Nope. Okay, so I'm in DaVinci. I'm creating a new flow. I would never recommend you to start from scratch. Always use a template. But for this demo, I'm starting from scratch. Hit create. There it is. I'm going to add a Penguin form because I want to select my form. And let me hit pause there for a second. There we go. And I'm going to wind it back just a second. So in the form, I'm going to be selecting my identifier first form that was created with that WYSIWYG form builder. So that's going to be the user lookup. And then the next option would be which theme to apply on top of the form. Because I'm using the generic one, I've just left that to use the environment default, which is the generic form. So I'm going to move on here. And there we go. I just left that as the active theme. That's my form. I want to hit save. I'm going to deploy the changes and just try it out. So this is the iterative trying out that makes orchestration powerful. Okay, I like that generic process or form. So now I'm going to add a user lookup. And my data store is ping1. You can pick your own, right? You can just do an LDAP connection if you want. I'm going to look up based on username, and I'm going to map the username from the form into the find user. It's going to look up a user for me. Then I'm going to add another node on the canvas to interrogate that user and find group memberships that user is part of. So there's a read user group membership there. I'm going to add the ID that I got from the previous find user, the ID of that user identifier, and it's going to look up group memberships for me. Then I'm going to add a third node on this canvas, and now that I have looked up the memberships, I want to read back all the data from that group membership, because in that group is some additional metadata related to the theme that I want to present, right? So I'll show you that in a second. I'm just going to look up, there we go, read that group metadata, and I'll show you what I mean in a second, but I want to add my last form. My last form is that username password form, and this is the form that I expect to be branded based on this lookup. And I want to hit pause there, because I want to explain what I'm doing here. Okay, so, there we go. So this is just an example. I don't know why you would do this with groups. Groups is just an easy thing for me to demo to you. You'd probably store this in populations or in some directories they've got this organization concept. That's not the point of this. I don't want you to take away that I'm using groups. I want you to take away that I'm able to look up some hierarchical information about the user and retrieve metadata based on that to make a decision. That's the purpose I want to present here, right? So in this case, I got 4 groups and I've got metadata on the groups. In most of your directories, you would have metadata on these populations or organizations or whatever you call these constructs. In my case, I've got a theme ID that I've added myself. You can add any arbitrary information here that you want. And I've got the theme ID for the different themes for each group, right? So every group would represent a theme that I'm trying to retrieve in the flow, right? So hopefully that made sense. So what I'm doing now is just showing you that I can add anything, but I'm going to remove that. And so my user is going to be identified as part of the group, like group D. Then it's going to pull down that theme ID. I want to use that theme ID in this next form. I'm going to pick up the username credentials form and use theme ID now and represent the theme ID that I've retrieved from the previous node. And that will present that form with that branding, right? So this is the hosted pages. This is using our configurable branding. But as I showed you in the previous customer examples, you can deviate from this configurable branding approach and you can use custom HTML, bring your own custom HTML and CSS. We have customers that inject that into the flow. Or you can use the widget, which I'll show you in a little bit. I'm just picking the right mapping for my theme. Let's try this flow one more time. So now I'm going to look up Ellen. I've got this list of customers here. So Ellen on the bottom is part of Group D. So I should get the travel insurance theme if I did it right. There we go, right? I'm going to pick another user, Freddie, and this kind of brings you back to the first demo at the start of the session, right? Try this again, and I'm presented with another brand, right? So orchestration is powerful. This is very simple. I'm not saying that this will work for you. This particular use case I've built will work for you, but orchestration opens up the doors for a lot of flexibility where you can interrogate your own data structures and make runtime decisions for you. I prettied the flow. That was a horrendous looking flow I just built for you. I just wanted to say that you can pretty it up, change colors, add some annotations, and make it look a little bit better than what I just built for you, right? Lastly, as we're wrapping up this session, I want to talk to you about this hidden secret called the widget, the embedded approach. Now, this does require a little more technical expertise than a configuration-based approach, because with the widget approach, you're doing 2 things. One is you're using this HTML node in a canvas on the right-hand side, where you're defining your own HTML for what the sign-in form looks like. that HTML needs to have the appropriate button IDs, component IDs, and CSS tags, right? You don't necessarily have to define the CSS in the orchestration tool. So when you hit the try flow to try it out, it could look like a horrendous form that has no styling. It just shows sign in, email, and a button in a really horrendous way. But what happens is then you can use our widget and embed it in these 4 different pages, and it will render that flow and inherit the CSS of the application and use that CSS. So none of the CSSs in this modal that's popped up comes from the DaVinci orchestration tool. That's all within the application, right? So this is another great way if you've got a number of applications and you wanted a consistent experience to use our embedded widget approach. Use one flow, one node to represent the sign-on, to rule them all, and still get different customizations based on the parent CSS. You can see the font looks different, the buttons look different, colors look different, and that's all driven from the parent CSS. I think this video is just illustrating that. I've got 4 tabs open, and I've already gone ahead and clicked the sign-on button just for time for you, and it's popped up the sign-on, but it's the exact same flow. And in this case, I'm not injecting context. I'm not looking up context in the flow in this case. All I'm doing is using this custom HTML node in the canvas. So a number of ways to do this. I'm sure you can figure out some ways that meet your own needs. But just to summarize this, I believe that orchestration is really a differentiator to end user experience. It gives you so much flexibility, and it ups at one level from not needing a developer engaged for every use case. It's also key to your agility and time to value. You can get things out there quick, you can make changes, and you don't have to tamper with the contract of that application, right? Get the developer involved to integrate with the orchestration, with the flow once, and make your changes after that, right? It's also critical when it comes to interacting with brands, because every brand is unique, and the alternative to what I showed you is a lot of manpower to build out these experiences, right? So it really helps. And if done well, and you've designed your experiences well, companies with superior customer experiences outperform their competitors by 80%, right? So super important, and I hope this was beneficial to you, and happy to take questions. I'm not sure how much time we have left. And I know everyone's hungry. I think we're pretty much wrapping up, but I'm happy to take a couple questions, and if not, come up to me and happy to talk through this. Okay.
I have a question. Given third-party cookies are dying.
Sorry?
Third-party cookies are dying.
Yes, yeah.
How do you solve that?
Yeah, it's complex, yes, for sure. So the redirect approach with the hosted pages is a redirect. So you've got custom domains that allow you to facilitate that. Oftentimes with the widget approach, it's very tricky if you're using different domains on different applications. And with that, we recommend custom domains as well to utilize within Ping 1 in this case. Yeah, I think that's that could be a presentation on its own, I think. Yeah. Especially when it comes to the sessions and checking your sessions and then making single sign-on. Yeah. Hi.
How do you see the Ping DaVinci orchestration engine changing and with the ForgeRock acquisition and vice versa?
Yeah.
They have their own orchestration engine.
Yeah. And by the way, everything I've presented here, there's actually a webinar with journeys and trees that show the same experience. I'm just the PM for the DaVinci side. So the great thing about the ForgeRock and the Ping marriage is both orchestration platforms were recognized as one of the leaders in the industry. And there's a lot of knowledge on both sides of the house. So while there may not be an immediate change right now, I think there's a lot of interaction going forward where whatever comes out is going to be a pretty rock solid solution. Trees, Journeys, DaVinci, none of them are going away. They've significantly invested. One is more so used for on-prem and single tenant, and one is a multi-tenant solution. But you'll start to see some cross-pollination of ideas. It's already happening. In fact, a lot of new features on both you'll start to see have come up with ideas. But what I've shown you here, especially when it comes to some of the core strategies of branding, can be done. I think what I want to leave with you is orchestration is powerful, regardless of if you're using Trees, DaVinci, or some other vendor. Consider orchestration for your solution. Yeah. Sounds good? Feel free to come up to me afterwards. Happy to have conversations with you. Okay, thanks everyone.